Okay, now we're going to, this is the second part, sorry, this is Chris at Near and Far Gunsmithing. This is the second part of the RG-12 disassembly reassembly video, and this is the reassembly portion. And so we're going to take this same gun and reassemble it. So the first thing that we do is we put the trigger and the hand back in place inside of the frame, and we have to manipulate that a little bit to make sure that the flat spring stays in place and that the hand goes up into the window the way it's supposed to. And so the right answer is that it never wants to do that, and so we have to play with it a little bit. And the most difficult part is getting it far enough up into the frame that the spring on the hand tends not like to not go into the slot, and so once you get it up in place, once we get it up in there, we will stick the trigger screw back in place and catch just enough threads to hold it that way in place there. And then we will reassemble the trigger guard and the cylinder stop. And so in the frame itself, we want to put the spring and the ball bearing, and then when you refit the, actually the easiest way to do this is turn it up this way and put in the trigger guard from the bottom, and you kind of turn it sideways so you can get everything in the right place. Hold it in place, and the easiest way to get these to line up is actually to got it not quite in the right place, sorry. And put in your punch from the other side to hold everything in place. And so that gives your spring tension, and you can feel that when you pull on the trigger. So I like to keep that punch in place because it keeps everything lined up, and what I do is slowly back it out so I've got just enough clearance to put in the pin, and then I tap the pin in. Of course, replacing the punch as we go. And so let me just set that a little deeper. Okay, so we got that in place. So now when we put the hammer back in, which is the next piece, the bottom of this sear nose at the bottom of the hammer fits between a sear on the back of the trigger guard and the sear that is the back of the trigger. So what you have to do is push the trigger a little bit to move that sear forward so that you can get the nose in between those two pieces. And when you get it in the right place, it sets just perfectly where it should. And you can push in the trigger screw and tighten that up just a little bit, not tight, catch some threads, so that you have pivot points and you can test everything. So as you see, as I work the hammer, the trigger is going back, everything's working as it should. I can go ahead and tighten those down because I've already got my trigger guard pin in place. My ball and my spring for the cylinder stop are in the right place. I can tighten these down. And actually this gun has been, if not well cared for, at least adequately cared for its age and the type of gun it is. It's in pretty good shape. I would say it has about probably about 90% of the finish at this point. There were a few rust spots that had to be cleaned off, but the main of the frame is in good shape, although, you know, back in the day, these are, you know, a real light steel alloy or aluminum frame, and so depending on the finish, you know, they tend to age well or not. We can put back in the transfer bar for the mainspring and its drum-headed pin. We just tap that a little to make sure it's flush with the frame. A little bit more. There we go. So it sits a little below the frame. It's flush on the other side there. Flush there. Put in the mainspring, which catches at the bottom of that transfer bar. We put in that extra large, very fine thread stop nut, and it's not wanting to line up here. I need to, there we go. Okay, we'll thread that in there, add a little tension to the mainspring. Now, this isn't super tight. Turns up fairly easily with those threads up into the space, so you get that exactly where it needs to be. It adds tension here. We've got this little set screw that can either add or reduce some of the tension onto the hammer. We're going to back it off just a little bit so that it's not quite touching, and looks all good from there. Okay. So then we're going to put our cylinder washer in place up under the end of the barrel. And unfortunately, I haven't found a better way to do this. You just have to put it in place and kind of get it lined up. I would normally say you could start the cylinder rod first, but it's got a nipple on it, so it doesn't really lend itself to kind of putting it in place and you know, to hold something in place. There we go. So we've got that in place. We rotate the cylinder rod so that the little hole for this nipple pin is in place, and we insert that. just take that all the way down so that we make sure the nose of that little pin is in place. And there you have it. We're back together again. Pretty straightforward, except for those couple of places like the pin that holds the cylinder rod in place and the forward outside of the trigger guard cylinder stop tip with the spring and the steel ball bearing are really the things to pay attention to, that you don't lose those. So there you have it, reassembly of the Rome RG-12.